Hello and welcome to episode 63 of Off the Record. As we teased 2 weeks ago and then re-teased accidentally last week and now are not teasing you this week, we're doing a little bit of a different episode today. We planned to save the music industry a while ago. Ultimately, we decided, how can we save the music industry if we can't be as popular as Donald Trump in 2015?
I'm so glad you got to say that and not me.
Yeah, I did it. We're going to talk about something. And first, we're going to do a little bit of follow-up from last week's episode where we talked about the Maine, who are doing a tour for free later this year. And before that, I will say, if you have any comments or feedback for Off the Record, you can check in on us at offtherecord.fm to leave questions on Tumblr, or you can tweet us hashtag AskOTR for questions, and we will get back to you. But first, some follow-up. There's a band called Wilco. I've never listened.
I can't believe you have to say this.
I've never listened to them. I've known about them for forever, I think. I've never listened to them. I'm not sure if I ever will.
So as the person who actually knows music history, this is what I'll say. They did a record called Summer Teeth, which if you like really good pop songs in the rock genre, the dad rock genre, it's very good. I can see if you like Transatlanticism Death Cab, you could very much like Summer Teeth.
I think they have a popular album called Foxtrot Cowboy.
Yankee Hotel Foxtrot or something
That's
like
the
that.
one.
So that's the one that has the movie. And I would say that's a really good music business movie.
Right, yeah. That's almost why I'm more aware of Wilco than anything, because one day when I watch documentaries, I will watch this one.
Yeah, that's definitely a must-see documentary for the music business. It's good. I don't love that record. I think there's a song or two that's good, but that's they had maybe an album and then a couple songs here and there that I really liked, and then the rest is so dad rock. I can't fuck with dad rock, as we know.
But anyway.
Yes. So they put out a free album through the Epitaph moniker Anti this week.
Yes, as a day before they played the Pitchfork Festival in Chicago, I believe.
Their hometown.
Yeah, so they released this free album out of nowhere on Anti, and it was called Star Wars, or it is called Star Wars. That's what we call timely marketing.
Yeah, but it's not a double entendre. It's a double thing, because they're really talking about the celebrity beefing.
I have no idea what they're talking about.
That's what I perceived from the quick second I listened to the song.
Okay.
And then I went, yep, sounds like dad rock, I'm out.
Uh-huh.
But what I think is interesting...
This is a big band, we should say.
A very, very big band. Basically, I would say doesn't play to under 5,000 people.
Yeah, they just announced a tour today, and
city.
a lot of them are in amphitheaters.
Yeah, so. They don't play to under 5,000 in most cities in America. So, but what I think is interesting, because we were talking about the Maine last week doing this free tour, is that predominantly when you're in the music business these days, you hear that when you're a young band starting out, I often say, until you have a song with 50,000 or more than one song with 50,000 streams on Spotify, you should be giving away your music for free, because you don't want to put gateways in between that. And that's not to say that your music can't be for sale on iTunes or Bandcamp, but there should be a free way to get it. And I still very much believe that, even in a streaming world. But what I think we're seeing now is that there's a lot of bands being really smart about knowing, hey, we've kind of plateaued. We're playing to the same people. We're not getting as many new fans as we get. What can we do? And I think that that's really what you're seeing the Maine do with this free tour, is this will get them out to a whole lot of new people and get them new fans. And the same thing with Wilco, is this is probably going to get them a good amount of attention and new fans.
And I will say, just as a little follow-up to the actual Maine tour, so they're playing, the free shows are in interesting places. A lot of them are at malls and stuff, so there's no cap. And I think the promotion was kind of yes, we'll let you play here for free. And that means people will come to our mall or to wherever to shop, hopefully. So that's interesting. And also, while the Maine are not necessarily asking fans for money, they are giving the option. There's a service called Cash.me, which is from Square, I think from Square, where you can send the band a donation of $0 to $1 million as kind of a thank you for a ticket, basically.
This is from Square, yes.
Yeah, so that's interesting as well. It's definitely not going to make them nearly as much money as it could have if they did a real tour, but I am kind of curious. I won't necessarily find out, but I am curious if they will receive thousands of dollars or not from this thing. But anyway, thought I'd mention that. Thought it was interesting. Still think it's an interesting thing.
I do too, and I bet you they're going to see great dividends from this of fan exposure.
Yeah, and further on the note of what Jesse was just saying with free music, like, you know, even if you're not necessarily plateauing, what we did for Knuckle Puck before we announced Copacetic was we made their Bandcamp free for, we put all their prior releases on Bandcamp for free for like 2 or so weeks. So we received about 10,000 downloads for Knuckle Puck in a period of in 10 days from putting all the band's music for free on Bandcamp. And I think about half of those email addresses were brand new.
Wow,
never had.
That's really good.
So we put 5,000 to 6,000 new email addresses in our newsletter where we announced the band's album on as soon as it went up. And then we sent a secondary newsletter for when the pre-orders and first song went up. So we were able to send a newsletter to thousands of people just because we were like, hey, you know what? One, we should get our new music, our old music in front of as many new fans that do not have it. And then two, we should have as much like artillery as possible or ammo as possible to send out as soon as we do announce our new album so people can pre-order it or listen to the new music or be excited to go to Warped Tour and buy merch or something like that. And that's a clear success. It was great.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really glad we did that. But, you know, there's all sorts of things you can use your music for leverage in other ways. Even if, we obviously would not have gotten 10,000 people to buy songs in 10 days, right? So the fact that we can leverage all those download addresses to buy music or come to a show, and those email addresses, unless, people delete them or abandon them, do not go bad in the future. So it's a no-brainer long-term, in my opinion.
Did you see that really interesting statistic about the Hillary Clinton 2008?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, you want to tell the Democrats?
Yeah. Well, so there's a really interesting statistic about the emails Hillary collected on her 2008 campaign, and it was. Well, now I have to get the real numbers.
I think she had 2 million email addresses, and now only 100 or 200,000 of them are still active, or that's the general point, at least,
Yeah, I want to say that was what it was. But I think that's an interesting thing as somebody, one of my email addresses that I don't write from, but that I do keep active, my mac.com address. I've literally now, I think I've had that since 2002 or 1.
I wasn't even born yet.
So I just think it's funny. I always think it's funny, too, when people abandon an email address instead of getting it to forward on to their new one. Because it just seems ridiculous to me because, I guess it's also because I've been in business for myself and my business goes off of people being able to contact me.
I agree. I will just say, though, that like that Hillary stat was kind of insane to me. Like to me, those are either spam email addresses to begin with or like, man, did everyone I don't know. I guess maybe everyone just stopped using Yahoo.
A lot of college kids. I think that
that's
might
a
be
good
the thing.
reason, actually. College. I didn't think about that.
College kids and people moving from Yahoo to Gmail, or just started to use their job
or just
email.
like if I had my Drexel email and it gets if it gets deleted in a year and a half or something like that.
Yeah,
that's interesting. But yeah, man, imagine having. Oh God,
it's a rough one.
Real
rough time.
Yeah.
So on to the meat of the show. So throughout the time we've done this podcast, it began to become grimmer and grimmer as we discuss how badly musicians were compensated, but also, I don't believe there's any way forward but streaming music.
Stuck between a buffer and a stream.
That was not good, dude.
I know. I thought it was going to be good.
You've been batting pretty high lately, but that was definitely a swig at a serious miss.
Yeah, that's probably what I get for seeing Taylor Swift last week.
I was so hoping we wouldn't mention her this episode.
By the way, for anyone that would like to see what it looks like when Jesse dances to Taylor Swift, you can go to twitter.com/offtherecordfm. There's a great photo of Jesse throwing his arms up in the air as 22 came on at a DJ night in Brooklyn that he went to.
I think it was actually Sugar Cult Memory, dude.
Oh my God. Do you like Sugar Cult?
That song is one of the best pop
Isn't that
songs of all time.
just
That
what
song
a
is
hit.
amazing.
That band honestly had hits. Like, whew.
I don't know. They had a lot, just like you, a lot of misses. But when they got a hit, man, it was out of the park. Like that song
Fuck
is
you,
like
Jesse.
one of the best pop, like pop with a capital
Yeah.
P-O-P punk songs.
It is and
even that Neon Tree song he co-wrote's really good.
Yeah, that guy has money now for sure.
Totes. So at some point it hit me that musicians as a whole in a nonprofit should own a streaming service, because what's going on with the compensation right now and the lack of musicians say in it is kind of disgusting. So I went about trying to design what would be my ultimate music streaming service to compete against Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, etc. And I spent, I think, 3 to 4 months of my brain space kind of taking notes and writing up a 20-page proposal on what this would look like.
You brought it up to me. I heard about it a few times. Then I didn't hear about it and thought it was maybe dead. And then months later, it reemerged, and I read more than I ever had in 4 years of college.
Meaning he read 20 pages where most of them were half pages written.
It was mentally exhausting.
What the long and short of it is, one of the things I came up with is that this should be a nonprofit owned by musicians almost as a union, so that the musicians are making negotiational changes for this. So sadly, and the reason we're talking to you about this now, is I realized that this is not possible because the major labels are a disgusting cartel. Right about the week that I sent this to Zach, in fact, I shouldn't say not right about the week. The day I sent this to Zach, an article came out from Turntable FM's CEO, where he discussed that basically what happens to you as a music streaming service is you have to pay a large advance of your venture capital money in order to get the major labels to not sue you. So when we see that $20 million that Sony paid the major labels, that's basically a bribe to not be sued, not have Spotify be sued by them, is basically what he was saying. And this has been a lot of the reports of this.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. You can't just create a service that sells or streams or something, even if you're going to pay it out, because it's more like a club that you have to be let into. And at the same time, in order to be even let into that club, you have to have your full product anyway. So so you kind of need to break. It's not a law, but you kind of need to, risk your whole livelihood and being able to be sued to have a compelling, like a major label isn't going to let you stream your music if you don't have a compelling product in the first place. But you can't have a compelling product if you don't have users or interest or whatever. But you can't necessarily, you have to either be doing something that the major labels are not happy with, or have your back so broken towards major labels that users aren't going to use your service. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah. And so with that, I did some research, and it costs $20 million to build the first iteration of Mog. Mog is now Apple Music after it became Beats Music.
Not too bad.
Then same thing with RDO, same thing with Spotify. So the other thing is because this was going to be a nonprofit, venture capital wasn't going to be very interested in this. So venture capital is where all those services got their first money, but I could get free donations that are tax deductible from it. So that's how I figured I would try to raise this money. And I figured because we would then not have to pay taxes on it, we could get a leverage. But what I overlooked until I sent it to Randy Nichols is that none of these companies are paying taxes anyway because they're not profitable yet. And I was grateful for him to point that out to me because I did overlook that.
That is just so sick, but not in a sick way.
Yeah, so, and they will eventually have to pay taxes, but I figured this would be a way that would get this to be more fair. And one of the other things that's really frustrated me that I had built into this is that, as any of you know who've put up music, that in order to get your music on these services, for the most part, you need to pay a service like TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid, or Reverb Nation to put your music up, which most of these services, aside from DistroKid, cost about $50 a year for your record.
Yeah, and beyond that, they have none of these services take percentages, but
That's not true. CD Baby takes 10%.
oh, sorry, I don't use CD Baby.
Yeah, they're
So
awful.
TuneCore could be $25 for 1 year, or $70 for 3 year best deal kind of thing. And you never, in some ways, it's like, well, why wouldn't I do this forever? And in other ways, it's like, well, maybe I don't want to pay $70, and then you pay longer. Like I do this with bad timing even sometimes. It's like, why wouldn't I pay this for 5 years? I own this music, and then I'll do it for 2 years anyway. I don't know. It's all a janky system.
Yeah. And what I think was interesting about the MySpace era of music, aside from the shitty clothing and bad haircuts.
At least you got Forever the Sickest Kids, man.
I know, it's true. I'm forever grateful for MySpace, Forever the Sickest Kids, and Lily Allen. Everybody was able to put up their music, and it really did lead to like a cool thing that like it was so easy to get music out there. Now SoundCloud and stuff like that still presents that, but I think for streaming music to truly become great, everybody has to be able to do this. What I also thought about, and one of the features of the system was that everybody, so let's say a celebrity, let's call it Brangelina, decide they're going to make a mixtape about the songs they fell in love through. I don't see why you can't make a playlist and then upload audio snippets where you narrate that and then profit from your narration, just like as if it was a song. If somebody's streaming it, you should be able to get part of that money where you talk about it in that part of the stream, just as people should be paying for it. So I wanted to do something like that where anybody could, one, upload music, and then two, people could upload and talk about it. Because to me, one of the biggest parts that's broken of music podcasts and radio presently is that you can't do, like, I would love nothing more than if I could go on and make an audio podcast where I could teach an ignorant motherfucker like Zach Cirillo about the history of a band he should know about, just as he has in his Start Today features. So
Whatever.
I'd love to guide someone through, say, The Clash and say, hey, this is what's great about this song. You should know this, know that. But right now you can't do podcasts like that because the licensing fees would be absurd. Whereas if you could do that through a streaming music service, all the right stuff is already in. There's no hassle, and it could just happen. And I see that as a big, big part of the future of streaming. But sadly, these assholes have put way too many blockades in the way of being able to do that still.
Right. There are clearly all sorts of like great other things that we could imagine us listening to based off of music that's not necessarily music that no one can necessarily afford to put the time into because financially there's no way to see a return, right?
Yes. And so that was some of what I wanted to try to solve. So one of the things, obviously, too, is that we're seeing a lot with native advertising. If anybody listens to like the Startup podcast, which is one of Zach and I's favorites, they do these ads. They actually had a great episode this week about the ads that they do.
I was shocked at some of that stuff.
Yeah, you tweeted you were shocked. I think
I guess I wasn't shocked. I just like to hear it was like, damn, this is real. Okay. You know, it was less of like I thought it was impossible and more of like this is pretty unreal.
I don't know. I grew up, my father was an advertising executive dude, so I feel like I just grew up hearing all that. It's just
more of a matter of like you don't necessarily know how many people are listening to some of these shows, right? Like,
oh yeah, that was shocking.
That's what I mean. So like, the three white guys talking in a room podcast I listen to, like the most popular ones have 80,000 listeners, which is really still pretty goddamn large, $80,000 a week. And they sell their advertisement spots for like $3,000 to $4,000 a spot, which is a lot if you do 52 episodes, obviously. But and that's a revenue of hundreds of thousands. But for what we're talking about, there's a show on Gimlet Media called Reply All, which I guess I did not realize was so large. And they expect to do $2 million gross revenue for 2015.
No, it was all of Gimlet's $2 million.
Okay, got it. So these are large numbers. So,
but the point I wanted to make with advertising is I think there's a lot of musicians who would be more than happy that if you found products that they actually like and actually want to endorse, and then said, hey, people are going to hear you doing an ad of this in their feed, or even another musician. There's often musician budgets for musicians for advertising that would be way more effective. That, let's say you are the Wonder Years and you really like Knuckle Puck, let's say. That if Rise was going to put some advertising in, it'd be pretty effective to have in the Wonder Years playlist an ad saying, if you like us, you'd love Knuckle Puck. Or let's say you like wearing a brand of clothing, you like drinking a certain drink. You could have that in your playlist and find a way to monetize those ads. And that was something I wanted to devote a lot of resources to, because I think there's a ethical way. And, this Gimlet episode, it was very interesting of that. Like, they were saying even when they like a product that it feels weird to endorse it. And I do get that, because
it's just a personal preference.
It's also, let's think about this. You and I have done ads on this show where I don't even know what the fuck the product is. And then we've done ones for products I truly love, like Limited Run. It is weird feeling because it kind of makes it like everything you do you love. But like, when rappers are already rapping about their Gucci sneaks, or white boys who beat up women named Roddy Radke, why not just do an ad and get the money? Why not have a service that's connecting you with those brands? And if you don't want to do it, you just don't do it. It's very simple. But I thought that could be an effective way of getting money back into music.
Totally. And I think most people in the world, including me, 97% of the time, view ads as this horrific practice across the internet, across TV, across billboards, whatever, or buses. But, ads don't necessarily need to be this terrible thing. I think a lot of us that listen to podcasts, and if you're listening to this, hopefully you, have kind of come to terms with like, wow, ads aren't always so terrible. But the way that we see them most of the time are horrific. And smart advertising is the advertising that should win out at the end of the day. And something like Jesse was just talking about or was once writing up is kind of an example of that. Why not leverage in a more smart way what's going on? What Jesse's been alluding to here, though, is that what is reality and smart and kind of a no-brainer does not necessarily win out when there are walls and walls and walls of baggage built up over years and years of time, decades worth.
Yes. So one of the other things that I have a big problem with streaming with, and like, I'm sure you guys have all, if you listen to this show regularly, have heard Zach and I endlessly ramble on about how these streaming sites are all the same and they're not doing anything new, but you're like, oh, well, what else could they do? Well, so one of the things that's my most frustrating thing that I'm often alluding to in this is that I want a music service that connects me with strangers, not friends. If you listen to this podcast because you like what Zach and I do in the world of punk, you've probably made a lot of your friends from the internet or connected with people from your shared love of music that you wouldn't otherwise know. I often tell the story of that one of my best friends since I was 16 years old. I'd see him. We went to high school together. I'd see him in the hallway, and I looked at him like, look at this little shit with his leather jacket, Dead Kennedy's shirt, and all this stuff. He thinks he's so fucking punk. I'd yell at him like, Sid, where's Nancy? And tease him all the time. Then I went on my AOL profile, and I get a message one day, and he had read my music taste. I read his. We started talking, and we're like, so you live in Montclair? Do you go to the other school in Montclair Kimberly Academy? Then it turned out, no, we knew each other, and we went to high school with each other. We just hated each other by the looks of each other.
Wow, Jesse, way to be close-minded, man.
Well, but he looked like the type of punk kid I hated at shows, like the fucking fashion punk losers, and I was more into the music and the politics.
Kind of on that note, I was at a show last night. Oh, Jesse, I went to 2 shows yesterday, and
I saw that.
It was a rough day for me. I went to Warped Tour for 10 hours, and then I went to a show for 3 hours. And my life hurts a little bit. But I will say I was at the show and one of the bands said something on stage about like knowing people through music, yada, yada. And I was like, man, I wonder if I'm friends with anyone in 2015 that is not tied to music. Or, through the internet, through music, in some kind of way. And I was like, I don't know that I can think of anyone.
Yeah, and the majority of my friends are Todd, who I wrote my book with. I was on a message board, and I met his bandmate, and they came in to do drums. Like, everybody I'm friends with, for the most part, is because of the internet and music connecting me to them. You and I, too. These streaming services aren't doing that. Instead of seeing the idiots that randomly friend me on Facebook, what they're listening to, I want them to show me the person who's most similar to me and what they're listening to so I can get recommendations on the other things they're listening to. And I want them to enable me to talk to those people. So that was one of the things I really wanted to do. Is I also think it's just important for personal connection. Like, I think about a kid who has racial biases and is ignorant to this world, what it's going to be like when they see that somebody in, Mongolia actually has the most similar music listening taste to them, and what that will do for their worldview. And I think this is a really important thing that we need to do and that startups are failing at, is that we have to show commonality and enable people learning and communicating and finding their kinships over the internet. And music's one of the strongest kinships. I think of how many people I enjoy that I've met through this podcast and Twitter, from putting up articles that I really enjoy's brain and reading what they're thinking each day. And that's through this. And all of these services are failing us in that way.
Yeah, even the most relevant, the most new rather, Apple Music has no really way to connect to others except artists that you may follow who may or may not use the service. So yeah, I agree. Social to me, as someone who cared zero about it, and then when I started using Apple Music, was like, wow, I really wish I had this. It's become clear more and more every week that like this is such kind of a no-brainer of a feature, because it expands. Even if you look at it in like a negative sense, or not a negative sense, but kind of like whatever. Like, even if you look at it like, oh, these services only want you to connect so you can find more music from other people, so you can stream it and we can make more money off of ads or subscriptions. Like, who cares? You're still finding more music. Like, it's a good thing for everyone. The services are making more money, hopefully, and you're finding more music and you're connecting to more people. Like, that's what you want. That's what anyone should want.
And that's often like what Y Combinator advises is the best part of tech, was when it's win-win for both your users and your profits. That's what you're really looking for in tech, and that's a lot of your goal, is that a product your users love and benefit from and that you profit from. That's the jackpot.
Right.
And I wanted to say, like, I think one of the saddest things was that SoundCloud had something like this, where SoundCloud wasn't necessarily introducing you with an algorithm to people who are similar to you, like I would like to see, but there was these groups for micro genres, and this never really caught on in punk the way I'd like, but in the dance stuff I listened to, is like there'd be groups for like the most obscure genre of a subgenre stuff, and what would happen is, you could submit to them, or you could submit to the admins, and then they'd choose the best stuff that was submitted to them and put it down the pike. Or if they were an open group, everybody could just post in, and the admins would then have blogs, and that's how they'd find what to post to their blogs. And that's how I first heard like huge groups, like people who are really shaking things today, like Madeon and Porter Robinson. And I can't believe that these streaming services aren't doing something like those SoundCloud groups.
Yeah, it's just about connecting. And so do we want to get a little more into other things you were trying to do here, solutions that you were trying to figure out, etc.?
Okay, so yeah. So one of the other things that I'm really not happy about with music is the like radio discovery thing. I think radio is a silly term for it in the first place, which we could talk about some other time. What I wanted to do is I wanted to make a charts, trends, and hashtag system. So what I wanted to make it so you could do is you could go on to a song. Let's, for Zach's promotional sake, say it's the new Knuckle Puck single off of Copacetic. And let's say you could tag that song pop punk, happy, whatever. And people could up and down vote the tag, but the more that it was tagged and listened with that tag, there would be a chart created for every tag. So let's say you wanted sad boy emo songs. You could go to sad boy emo songs and then go to another Reddit-like function where you could search a chart of the all-time sad boy emo songs, the most popular ones this year, this month, this week, today, this hour, And if that's your type of thing, like, so let's just say for like a genre, like you're really into mumblecore these days, you just can't get enough of that new turnover record. You could search the most popular songs or albums of all those different formats of mumblecore. Now, this could even get weirder where it's like, you know, kind of like with Twitter, where it could be like world's most depressing song, and then people could keep tagging that one and make it a thing, and you could, or listening to it. And the other thing is like, I just wish we could search metadata better. Like every song should be able to be searched by date. So like, because I think one of the things that really fails us when it's like Pandora Radio or Spotify Radio is that there's often a preference of what we want to hear. If like you want to hear modern pop punk and then this like No Use for a Name song from 97 pops out, that's usually not your shit. But like then the same thing happens to my older friends as they hear a newer pop punk song and they're like, oh God, this is fucking terrible. And they just want to be hearing those No Use for a Name, No Effect songs from 1996. And I want to make it so that you can search these things and then find a chart and see what's working and let that be your sortability. And I wish this was on YouTube. I wish this was on streaming. I wish this was on everything, because it makes no sense that it's not. And it would also totally open up the way the Billboard charts are done. It's like, imagine if you could have a saddest song chart every week or a pop punk chart every single week and see what's doing best on that. Like that seems really interesting and cool in this business, and could help people find stuff they like way better.
Right. It's all about like, you know, it's kind of like with any service, you know, it's the same thing for Netflix. The better, it's the same thing with Google too, right? The better something can get at learning what you like and what you'll like next, the more time you'll spend there, which will mean either the more money you give them or the more ad revenue you can give them. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, it's just like, if you like every, you know, TV show that Netflix recommends you, it sounds like you have a pretty good relationship with that service, right? Like these are not necessarily. I mean,
does anybody like most of those 10 picks though?
No.
Do you like theirs?
I don't know. I just like TV that I would go out to pick to watch.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, it's so rare that my top 10 picks for Jesse on Netflix, as it says, are ever anything. That might be because my roommates watch shitty TV.
If we want to use like Apple Music for a second, I have actually been liking the playlist that they've been recommending. Not necessarily for discovering new music, but just for listening to other music I like in, you know, jumbled up ways. Like all the intro to whatever band, all the intro to whatever playlist, or deep cuts for a band Y playlist. Like I've liked those. And so, you know, it's only more of a reason why I might go back to check out that screen again. So I think it makes complete sense to try to cater more to what the user will like, so that they'll in part like the service more. And then, by the way, the artists or the record labels would see more money from that.
Totally. And I just think in general too, like how many times people, like, you know, whether it's a nostalgic parent wanted to go back to 80s roller skate jams and just find a playlist of all the stuff tagged there, onto just like when a new genre kind of pops out, like whether it's mumblecore or whatever, an R&B more, like I really like that PC music stuff that's going on right now, and I'd love to see the tag of if like somebody's doing a hot new track that's in the style of PC music. I just it really bums me out that like this can't be sorted, because I would even love, like, let's say YouTube did this, to see like popular tech speeches. Their algorithm is so hard to search. What they show you seems so fucking random. When I would like to just see hashtag tech speeches. What's most popular? What haven't I seen? So I can watch. Let me decide instead of you thinking you know better for me. Let me have a way to do this. And that also doesn't even need to be mutually exclusive. This could be two different tiers of there being recommendations and a searchable chart hashtag system on all these things.
Yeah, it's just, you know, metadata is a vast land that confuses everyone, but is vital for the way the world should work.
Well, the funny thing is there's already metadata on all of this. Like the year and the genre is already entered on everything because it's required by all the aggregators.
Yeah,
which is just really silly. It was like there's a starting point for anybody who'd want to do this before users start even doing it. It's just a shame. I'd also think it would be really fun to have things like rap fails and find really bad white boy rappers and stuff.
Like your DJ group from MySpace?
There was definitely no rapping on my solo record. I knew better, and I got out of the rap game when I did that top 40 hit hip hop thing in 2001.
When Limp Bizkit was like, I got this.
All right, dog, you need to relax over there.
So, Jesse, how are you going to pay people?
So I thought one of the other things is obviously getting the profit system down. Like I thought the lack of taxes, the nonprofit, the being able to get donations. But one of the other ways I wanted to slim this down is none of these services are open source right now. So if the music community was able to help develop this, I figured that could cut down some of the costs of it's kind of ridiculous when you see how much money Spotify pours into engineers to make this product. It literally is like ludicrous how many people they have working on this. When you see like something like, the way Firefox or Chrome has been able to be developed through making extensions and making things like that make the services better. I wanted to cut it down by doing that. And then the other thing is I felt like if we could get a higher payout, so many of the artists would leave the lower payout systems or at least force them to go up, which would have been mission accomplished as well. Because I really wanted to do this just to drive up musicians' profits for these services. Because after we did that episode where we figured out it was 84 times to get paid for a song, it's pretty daunting. Basically, doing a lot of cost cutting and then employing. So if people don't understand what open source is, open source means that developers outside of the company can offer in things. Firefox, the browser, if you used to use that, was a great example. They'd offer up new builds and people will have done things to optimize how it is. They would test the build, and then once the build was functioning, they would put it up and let that be out there for it. There's extensions for it that are all able to be built on top of it. So that was one of the main things I wanted to do, because I think Beats and Mog had an API and stuff like that allowed you to do some certain things. And obviously Spotify has the apps section, but that's even really hoarded over. And I don't always think open source is the greatest thing. I mean, that's why Android phones suck so bad. But I do think that having an alternative, like just like we've been saying, like it'd be nice to have some sort of alternative instead of three services that are mostly the same.
Definitely. And I think all the stuff about API possibilities are really interesting, because like while everything comes back to the music, it doesn't necessarily only need to be about the songs. Like how can we make sure that all the people in the world see these tour dates, or how can we make sure all the merch is taken care of, or music videos, or any kind of promotions, right? And yeah, like Jesse was just saying, like Spotify has apps, and sometimes the tour dates will be okay. Like I'll log on to Spotify every once in a while, and I'll go to listen to a band, and it's telling me that they're playing in Ohio on October 27th. It's like, I'm not going to be in Ohio on October 27th or ever, hopefully.
RDOs with Songkick seems to work pretty damn well.
Yeah, and that's true. And so, but in general, like the more we can get in there in a smart, not cluttered way, it's just more residual, potential profit and exposure for the band. And I think if any streaming service is going to win them all, in some ways, of course, it's what's going to be the best listening experience, but also in other ways, it's giving a band the most reason, the most amount of bands, the largest amount of bands, the most reason to go all in on one service.
I don't think that they're going to all go in on one service. I don't really think that's I think there really is going to be a different service for everybody. And I kind of wanted to make the one for the biggest music nerds, since duh.
What about Tidal, man? Audio files.
Yeah, right. But I think that it's just going to be the thing is Apple's going to be the one for people like that, like the ease of having their old catalog and that there. And Spotify, I really think is going to become the one where people aren't paying for, and it's just going to be tons of ads because people don't want to pay for it. It's also going to become the one everybody links on the internet because it will just play for you.
It's actually a really good point. I feel like,
and I think, to that point, I think Amazon is going to be the one for, parents who don't care that much about music or are just happy they have something for free. I think Xbox is going to be the one for kids who are the only thing they know how to play is music. Oh, I know. What is it called now?
Groove.
Yeah. Oh, God, that hurts.
That's the one my dad would think we should sign up for because it sounds the coolest. Well done.
Thank
you. I got it back. Yeah, I think one more thing on that note, because it's interesting to me, is like Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, maybe, but maybe not Facebook. Like we've talked about in the past, music streaming services are just a commodity. They all need to have one, but it doesn't really matter that they do have one. It does make me a little more interested in, however, though, in Spotify, RDO, and to a much lesser extent, Tidal. Because, like, you know, Apple, like, this is the thing. iTunes makes money for Apple. I assume Apple Music will make money for Apple. But even if it lost money, it would be a loss leader to get people to buy iPhones, which makes them money, right? So, which is great. But I wonder long term, if all the massive services in the world have streaming services, if there is really room for more than one larger non-commodity streaming service to exist, right? Like, so Spotify continues to get tons of users, then it would probably be hard for them to go away unless they never can turn any money around. But like RDO and Tidal, if you have all these other services and platforms that you may trust more, I just don't know that there's necessarily infinite amount of runway for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I could see it. I just still think that there's going to be numerous services.
I agree. I mean, if you think about all
we
those...
we keep seeing conflicting reports that Facebook's going to have one. I don't actually believe Facebook's going to have one.
But if you do think of all those services, I mean, like if all those giant powers have streaming services, those are like 6 right across the board, right? And so that's already a lot. You know, that's more than we had iPod competitors, for example, you know, or computer competitors. So it's like, that's already a lot.
No, we used to have way more computer competitors.
Yeah, we used to. Not now, though. So, yeah, I think it's obviously interesting. But also to that note, it's going every single day that goes on, it's going to be incredibly harder for someone to break in, right? A new service, which maybe goes along
every
with
day
what
that
we're saying
goes
here.
on. This. I mean, you know, but it was always funny to me when people say that, because that's what everybody said during MySpace's peak, and LOL.
That's true.
know?
That's true. No,
I mean, really. Let's even keep it real here. I can remember tech blog posts that said Friendster now owned the internet.
Right.
And, you know, the only thing Friendster owns is a password of mine that I can't figure out how to take down pictures of an ex-girlfriend with. Whoever I was dating in 2000 and I are immortalized.
Forever. But I will say something that's different then is like there were a few streaming services, but there weren't a whole there were a few like social networks, but there weren't like dozens at that point like there are now with streaming services. And social networks now are a lot different. Like we've kind of segregated them into different categories. But that's a little not necessarily the point.
Yeah. So to get back into this, I think the one thing that I will say that Apple Music solved for me was I really wanted something like Connect, and they made that. I really think bands, it needs to be that if you listen to a band, like if you listen to an album more than 3 times, there should be able to be a thing on your preferences that says, I listen to a band more than 3 to 5 times, maybe 10 times, whatever you want to set it to. I want their news to come on a tab for me. That's the one thing Connect didn't do that I wanted to do, is I wanted to have something like Connect, and then whatever you post, I think that you should be able to set a thing that says, after 3 times I like this band, and then their news is there. And they should be able to link you to a newsletter, show you when they put up new merch, a remix, a new album, updated a playlist, whatever it is, you should be able to do that. And then you should be able to, just like Facebook, say, show me less of this band, show me more of that band. And it should just be nice and customizable so you can see the news, but also not make it so hard to get news. Like, especially as Gmail has made, you know, these tabs now so you don't really see the bands you're on the mailing list of because they go to your social thing. And let's be honest, no one reads their social box on Gmail. I think that it'd be really important to have a music service that serves us all with the information that we all wish we could get from a band that we're passionate about. I hate nothing more, and I'm the king of seeing that a band played the day before or the night of a show I would have wanted to see them. And that's because I don't have an easy way for somebody as busy as me to see all this stuff all the time.
Yeah, totally. This is kind of like the most stupid thing to say, but there's an ever increasing amount of information, and it's harder for everyone, bands, blogs, producers, Taylor Swift, to keep in the mix and to keep everyone's attention.
Just trying to keep getting those mentions up. It's a good thing we don't get like a number for every time you mention Queen Fuck Girl that ranks us higher on these things.
Don't you wish we did? We'd probably get all sorts of Taylor Swift listeners.
Yeah, you remember when Lauryn Hill said that she'd rather have her baby starve than white people buy her music?
God, did she really say that?
She really did say that.
Damn, that's sick.
She's an awful person. Anyway, I'd rather have no one listen to my podcast than have Taylor Swift fans listen to it. I see every week I give you another fact from the early 2000s, late 90s that you just totally missed out on. Like last week was Pete Wentz being in a band that sings about being a race
we
traitor.
Had a few comments back on that, like this was the best band ever, and I was like, I'd never heard of this band. First of all, and
they were not the best band ever.
But like a few
worst.
people did say that, and they were definitely serious, right?
So anyway, but I think Apple is kind of solving that. I would not be shocked if Connect 2.0 is helps to solve that. The last thing that I think really was relevant is that I think Rdio does this somewhat well, and Spotify's starting to do it well as they've ripped them off, which is that when you go to a band's page, there should be a good amount of information and a menu bar. But the one thing I think that all these services get wrong is that there's like 3 tiers of bands. And these 3 tiers have different goals. Like the huge bands, the Metallicas, the U2s, like their goal is really to just keep getting you to buy because everybody knows who they are. But then the mid-level bands, and when I say a mid-level band, I mean everybody from like the 1975 on down to a Wonder Years. Like bands that could headline somewhere between 1,000 to 10,000 a night. In various cities. They have totally different goals than those bands, and then the small bands who barely have any fans have totally different goals. And I think you should be able to customize your menu bar to get people to do what you do. And I think that one of the things is all these services kind of assume everybody's just make tools for the U2s and the Metallicas of the world. And I would love to see that it's like, it's obviously most important for a small band with no fans to have a way to communicate with people and to understand their demographic, whereas it's much more important for U2 and Metallica to sell. It's much more important for the mid-sized band to maybe have a different goal. Maybe they want you to just get hooked more and hear a sampler or watch a YouTube playlist of their songs. But I think you should be able to adjust that and like have Facebook's now made this call to action button where you could do it, which really seems to just be catered to what type of brand you are in Facebook size. But I think all these streaming services should allow you to be able to do different things in that.
So just more flexibility and
like I also think with too is like there's a lot of people whose only goal is YouTube subscribers right now. Yeah. They're not really in our genre, but it should be able to be like if you don't, if you think of it this way, what most of these services are doing now is they're allowing you to sell merch. Most YouTube stars don't have merch, but they would kill to be able to say, click subscribe to my YouTube channel right with one button right here. And that should be able to be a thing, or at least 2 clicks to get to their YouTube page. And I think that's the thing is a nonprofit who's interested in just helping musicians can do that. A Spotify who's now doing videos or a Tidal who's doing videos do not want you going to YouTube. So that's totally against their interests, and I think that was another reason we need a service like this.
Yes. And these are the exact areas, obviously, where competition would be good for each other.
Yes.
Because these things tend to be adopted elsewhere when someone comes up with a no-brainer feature, and while it can be a bummer for that first place to lose their exclusivity on a feature, like... it's ultimately what's best for everyone is great.
So that was it for features. So I guess I should explain why we're talking about this and why I gave up on this.
Why did you fail to save the music industry, Jesse Cannon?
I just, after seeing those bribes, so my next idea is I started going on LinkedIn. I signed into LinkedIn for the first time in 4 years. I started trying to find people to talk to at Tidal. And then over the past few weeks, all you'd see is these articles about what a shit show Tidal is, what a train wreck it is. And I don't feel like if I had approached any of these services, they could have it. So I decided to set this idea free because I would just like to see somebody implement it. And if they think these ideas are good, I'd love to use the product. I know I'm going to keep coming up with good ideas. I know the project I'm working on now is a great idea, and I'm really excited about it.
It's decent,
we'll talk about that.
People.
Yeah, fuck off.
Whoa! He didn't make me read a 20-page thing, so it's even better.
Yeah, I just gave you the elevator spiel.
The elevator spiel. Pitch.
I'll come up with other things, and I'd love to just see this go out there. I gave up on finding a home for this. And I just think it's the thing. There was part of me that was like, well, if I could get indie bands to sign up to this first, we could pressure the major labels by saying, hey, I can't believe you're going with services that don't pay you your artists as much. You should really be going to us if we got the profit up. And then I thought about, do I really want to live my life going to war with major labels for years, especially when the founder of Groove Shark was just found dead today?
That's dark, Jesse.
Just saying.
You're
man.
old enough as it is. We don't need to add these things into your life.
Dog, I'm just saying. I like living this easy breezy, stress-free hipster life I live. Like, the most stressful thing I have is going to see that Amy Winehouse documentary and crying for 2 hours.
So that's how I felt like when I saw Inside Out by Pixar.
Oh my God, you nerd. I should also mention that if you want to read the proposal, I actually wrote all 20 pages of it that Zach agonized over. It's available on offtherecord.fm in the show notes. Do you have any recommendations?
I finally started season 3 of Orange is the New Black on Saturday. This weird thing happened where because I didn't start, Grace watched it without me because she is a terrible girlfriend. And because I didn't start it like the day it went live, I didn't have less of a desire to watch it, but I almost felt intimidated. Even nothing had been spoiled for me, but I was kind of like, there's just less urgency because I didn't start when everyone else did. And so I finally started. Now I binge watched half of the season in a day, and I think this is the best one. But
it's the best season, yeah.
It's really, really good. But yes, I'm really liking that basically. And Mr. Robot still continues to be sick.
Yeah, it's the best show
and
on
now
TV.
After episode 4, I'm fully in on Fight Club.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's my.
But I wonder if how long they're going to keep that up. I feel like it has to come to an end soon.
I think that's the thing is they're going to let it go after season 1, and then it's going to continue to be a great show with that as part of the premise.
Yeah. So
I also read a tip on Up Rocks. They kind of tipped that hat.
Oh, did I?
Yes. I think my only recommendation was Amy, and I already tipped my hat on that. Oh. I've just been watching tons of Two Broke Girls because I'm brain dead and I can't do anything else right
when
now.
you tweeted that you had that, it was a shocking moment in my life.
Dude, it's about Williamsburg life. That's how I'm living, dog. I mean, even though it's the most ridiculous shit on earth and nothing they do seems like actual Williamsburg, but I still enjoy it. And, I got a big crush on Kat. The only crush I have more than Kat Dennings is Carrie Bechet on *Halt and Catch Fire*.
It's on my list.
Oh, jeez.
I may get into that in August. I've almost pushed through all my other summer shows right now, so that's next on my side. I use a website called Sidereel, where I track all my shows by episode, so I never miss anything. And
the fact that you can't do that by brain,
you have no idea how much TV I watch.
I think I watch just as much TV as you, and I can still keep track of it because you know what I do. As I illegally download, I do it, or if I hit play on the show and I see I've watched it before, I go to the next one.
No, man, I have too many shows on too many networks, on too many services. No one watches nearly as much television as I do. And I'm not bragging. I'm not bragging. It's just like,
Zach,
it's bad.
I think you and I are two peas in a pod in this one. I think we're going to have to actually measure this one out and see which of us is watching more shows. to see if you're actually right about this.
All right, man. I'm not trying to brag here. It's just
I'm more saying out of curiosity. I'm not trying to compete.
78 television shows on Sidereel. Those shows are obviously not all happening at the same time. Some of them have fallen.
Well,
maybe you
do watch. Maybe you do watch more than me.
I watch a ton. I am typically like in a fall or starting in the fall. I am probably watching 20 TV shows at one time. And those then rotate out because then some winter ones come on or summer ones come on. I watch an inordinate amount of television. And again, not bragging, just the reality of my life.
I'm going to now give you this one because there's no way I'm watching that much.
Seriously, no one watches nearly as much television as I do. Like, it's because I need the television because it's just like you watching Two Broke Girls. It is my that is my binge drinking. And
I just need something on in the background when I have to answer the stupid emails I get all day of asking, what is a vocal up mix? Take us out.
Well, thank you for listening to Off the Record, and we are sorry for not saving the music industry. Maybe one day. Maybe we'll just burn it all down. You can keep up with us if you are listening live on Adobe by subscribing at offtherecord.fm or on iTunes, and you can leave us questions on Twitter or Tumblr. Thank you, and we will be back next week with episode 64.